Welcome to Todd Talk. Today I'm going to give you my pitch for the Star Wars prequels.
Todd Talk is brought to you by Chibi. Chi Baby.
Now let me preface all of this with, I love Star Wars. Star Wars has had a very interesting history. I was born in 1973, so I remember when the very first Star Wars came out. I was just a little kid, and movies used to stick around in theaters much, much longer, so I did see the original Star Wars in the theater. And I was in grade school when Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi came out. And those three movies were the best thing ever. Now, Star Wars is just a hero's journey. If you're familiar with Joseph Campbell, who wrote a whole book about that, there's this kind of archetype of a story that has been told over and over throughout time. And it's Star Wars. You know, it's about the regular Joe who ends up being a special person. He meets a mentor who has to save a princess, fight a bad guy, and live happily ever after. It's exactly the same story as Harry Potter, and The Matrix, and countless other stories. Empire Strikes Back was an interesting movie because it didn't have a happy ending. It was a middle movie, intentionally, and a bunch of weird and bad things happened to our characters, which was really intriguing at the time. And Return of the Jedi, looking back, is not a perfect movie, but it was a really great finale. Looking back at the Jabba escape, I don't know what the hell Luke's plan was. The Ewoks were a little bit silly, but I get what they were going for with the, primitive culture beating the Empire. And, the fight on Endor, plus the group going to blow up the Death Star, plus Luke fighting Darth Vader all at the same time, and then the everything is lost moment, and then everything is saved. It was a really good ride. And then he did the special editions, which weren't 100% terrible, but there was some terrible stuff in there. The whole Greedo shot first, the whole Jabba the Hutt scene were terrible. But, cleaning up what the Emperor looked like, cleaning up the Cloud City, those were really cool things. Anyway, the first three movies were a fantastic trilogy. And the thing about fantastic stories, whether it's Star Wars or Harry Potter or Marvel or The Matrix, is you always want to know more. I remember being a little kid and reflecting on what Obi-Wan Kenobi told Luke about his father and how they fought together in the Clone Wars, and just imagining what were the Clone Wars? What did that look like? These possibilities of the world before all of this just seemed so enticing. And then many years later, when I was in my 20s, Lucas says he's doing another trilogy. He's doing a prequel trilogy. And it was fine. Lucas is a great world builder, but he's not a fantastic director. He's made a couple of cool movies. American Graffiti was a fantastic movie. But Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, he didn't direct those. So anyway, Lucas is releasing another trilogy. It's going to be a prequel trilogy. And I'm pretty excited. We're going to get to see, where did Darth Vader come from? What did the Jedi look like before all of this? What were the Clone Wars? And there was some cool stuff, but it was kind of a convoluted story. The romance between Anakin and Padme was pretty flat, and it could have been so much better. And I know a lot of millennials love the prequel trilogy, and I get it, because you were young when it came out. Same way I was young when the first trilogy came out. Adults at the time were probably looking at Ewoks and going, oh gosh, this is stupid. And I remember not liking C-3PO. He was obnoxious and annoying. When I saw the prequel trilogy, Jar Jar was inexcusable, but a lot of kids liked it. And that's the problem with this kind of stuff is it's for kids, but the kids grow up and they want grown-up stuff. And somehow, Rogue One, The Mandalorian, Andor, that is grown-up Star Wars. Somehow they have captured that, and good for them. But that prequel trilogy and that sequel trilogy kind of missed the mark for everybody. Now, the sequel trilogy is a terrible trilogy. They're not all terrible movies. There's really great movies in that trilogy, but they clearly had no plan on how to wrap that thing up. But we'll talk about that another time. Back to the prequel trilogy. So the prequel trilogy, if we just disregard everything, and let's say they came to Todd and said, hey Todd, we want you to write the prequels, episode 1, 2, and 3 for the Star Wars Skywalker saga, what would I do? Well, I'll tell you what I would do. So the one thing we know is when Obi-Wan told Luke about his father, he said he was the best star pilot in the galaxy, a cunning warrior, and a good friend. So episode 1, Obi-Wan Kenobi has just become a Jedi Master, and he's being assigned his first pupil. He gets this teenager named Anakin Skywalker, who's a little bit of a troublemaker. He's an orphan. The Force comes easily to him, and he's got a terrible work ethic. These two do not like each other. So basically, it's a buddy film. They get sent on a mission, they do some investigating, they uncover that some separatists are assembling to challenge the Republic, the Sith is involved somehow, they get into some hijinks, and they end up best friends at the end. And that's it. That's episode 1. Episode 2 is a love triangle movie. So it's a couple years later, and the Clone Wars have begun. One of the separatists, a Mandalorian named Jango, has cloned himself many times and assembled an army to challenge the Republic. So then a woman who is exactly the same age as Anakin gets between him and Obi-Wan. Now this particular woman is named Padme, and she happens to be a senator, and she's a little bit of a troublemaker. All of the senators are kind of celebrities, and they're all rich, and they're all a little bit corrupt. Now, the Jedi are supposed to basically be monks. They are sworn to protect and keep the peace in the Republic. So at this point in the Clone Wars, all of the Jedi are mobilized and in warrior mode and protecting the Republic. Lots of Jedi on Jango fighting. But Anakin kind of has his eye on Padme, and they start spending some time together. Now, Padme thinks this one senator is really influential and amazing. This guy Palpatine is going to be a big deal someday. So Anakin goes out of his way to meet Palpatine, and they start hanging out together, and Anakin starts acting more and more like Palpatine. So at one point in the Clone Wars climactic battle, Obi-Wan really needs Anakin's help, and Anakin doesn't show up. He goes with Bail Organa and Padme and Palpatine and does whatever senators do. The Jedi lose a crucial battle in the Clone Wars, Obi-Wan has been betrayed, and the movie ends. Episode 3. It's a few years later, and Anakin is now a celebrity. He and Padme have gotten married, she's pregnant, he's kind of this hotshot Jedi bodyguard for this senator, and people love him. Now the Jedi, they've completely turned their backs on Anakin. He has betrayed them, he has gone a different route and is no longer a Jedi in their eyes. So a couple things happen very quickly. Padme has the twins. The war has moved from the outer rim to the inner planets, and things are becoming very desperate. So all of the senators vote to give Palpatine emergency power. Now, meanwhile, the few remaining Jedi discover that Palpatine has been in cahoots with the Separatists. He's been financing them, he's been leaking information to them, and helping coordinate their efforts. Just as it seems that there's no hope left, somehow Palpatine manages to sign a peace agreement between the Separatists and the Republic, and together they agree to form an empire. The Jedi reach out to Bail Organa and to Padme, and they share what they've learned about Palpatine. When they confront Palpatine, Palpatine turns on them, and we see his full fury. There's a big fight and a chase. Bail Organa manages to slip away, but Padme gets caught and her ship is destroyed, killing her and probably the kids. Palpatine delivers the news to Anakin personally that the Jedi have destroyed Padme's ship, and Anakin is furious. In Darth Vader armor, Anakin starts hunting down all of the Jedi. There's some amazing lightsaber fights, of course, and then finally, the last of the Jedi attempt an escape on the Tantive 4, the very first ship we see in Episode 4. And here, Obi-Wan and Anakin have their duel. We get an amazing fight, something like Revenge of the Sith, and it culminates with Obi-Wan knocking Anakin back into an escape pod and launching him off. The escape pod goes shooting down to Mustafar, where it lands in the lava, and he is burned to a crisp. Palpatine finds him and basically resurrects him, adds the breathing mask to the suit, and Darth Vader, as we know him, is born. At the end, we learn that Bail Organa actually had the twins, and he and Obi-Wan split them up as not to raise suspicion, and the seeds of the rebellion are sown. And that's how I do it. You know, it's a lot of the same beats, really, but the story could have been so much more compelling. Anyway, let me know what you think. Leave me a comment, let me know what you like, let me know what you would change. And maybe in another Todd Talk, I'll tell you what I would have done with the Book of Boba Fett.